Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. I've got a hat and no hat band. We need to fix that. Let's make something beautiful and absolutely useful. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com, or check below. We've got links there. Going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's step over to our pattern table, talk about what we're going to do. This is a simple project that looks great. We're going to get some compliments on this. Okay, so let's take this just one simple step at a time. First off, measuring for our hat. We're going to use a simple tape measure. Well, here's the problem. The tape measure is not going to give us the same measurement as a 4 to 5 ounce leather. Here's where we're going with this. Let's add about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch to the length of our hat band. We'll explain that. So let's jump over to a digital pick. So 23 7/8 or 60.9 centimeters for our length. For me, 3/4 of an inch width, 1.9 centimeters. Now we've got a little billet here. We're going to talk about that. We may and may not use that. Below that, there's our recurring pattern. So I've got a 3" or 7.62 spread between our spots. I'm going to come in 1/2 of an inch from either side. That's going to give us 9 holes with a 1/4 inch spread. And we're going to have a 1/4 inch spread widthwise. So 1/4 by 1/4. Okay? Now let's look at our hat band. So right here, I love the look of the lace hanging down the back of my hat, down the hat brim. Well, if you don't like that, that's what our billet's for. But it does two things. First off, I like the look. But secondly, now we can absolutely crank down on this hat band and it's going to be a perfect fit every time. We don't have to be exact with every measurement. Okay? So our little billet. Well, if we're not big on the lace, we can always make a second little billet and we can just rivet that on. Now, we need to have a very good measurement if we're going to go that route. But also, say we could drop one in on either side, maybe a larger spot, some decoration. Yeah, 1,000 ways we can go with this. Or maybe we can drop this up front. We could increase the size a little bit. Maybe drop in a cool stamp design, a logo, our initials. So many ways to go. But I love that simple look. Okay, so we've got a feel for this. Let's jump over to our main table, start cutting some leather. We're going to work with a 5 to 6 ounce natural veg tan belly. Now, if you're new to leathercraft, so many things to say about a belly. Very affordable cut of leather. And notice how much good leather we're getting here. Right there, clean, tight flesh side. The hallmark of a good tannage. But this is the same tannage as the balance of the hide. But what the tannery's done is they've stripped this piece off because this is the least preferred cut for, say, a production shop. Belt maker, great example. If they can get a piece that's a little more rectangular, they're going to have less waste. Well, that's a big plus for us because now we get a quality cut very inexpensively. Okay, second point here. I rarely ever want to cut a hide across the middle. Length is always our friend. Well, there's exceptions. Belts, a double shoulder. The belt is strapped across the hide instead of lengthwise, so it's going to be a little less stretch. Right here, we're doing a 5 to 6 ounce. Even if I cut this in the middle, I can still get almost 34 inches of strap. 5 to 6, I'm not going to need any more than that. So let's go ahead and cut this right there. Good. There we go. Still plenty of leather to work with. Right here, we're going to need a straight edge because we're going to use our wooden strap cutter. So let's come into the inside, away from the outside of the hide, and let's just drop in a good straight edge right there. Okay, we've got a good straight edge. Now our wooden strap cutter. One of the best tools for the least money in our shop again. So right here, I'm going to set this right at 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm going to pull this in. There we go. I'm going to get it started. But then I'm going to pull this tab just a little bit left. I don't want to try to press in on this or we'll get a wavy cut. But if we don't, look how easy that is. Now let's just check one into the other. Absolutely perfect, just what we're looking for. Okay, so now we need 23 7/8. Very good. Okay, step back over to our pattern table, drop in our marks for our holes. The only difficult part of this project is just doing our best to get our lace holes consistent. Well, let's start right here. Let's go with some poster board or some copy paper. Super easy to mark on, and we can erase if we need to. Well, also a big help is that we don't have to do this 7 or 8 times. Let's make one. Let's take our time on that one, but then let's transfer that over to some of our pattern sheeting. So therefore I can mark and just scoot and mark. Makes it very easy. Well, also too, let's take our time on that because we have to do that 7 more times. So let's start right here. I've got a 23 7/8 inch piece. So basically, let's just come in a 1/16 of an inch on either side. Well, right there, there's my center mark. Let's mark that, okay? So with our pattern, I can see where that hole lays right in. Good. Let's drop that in and let's mark all our holes and then this end hole. And that hole. Good. Okay, let's scoot. Now we're going to do this 3 times on either side. When we get down here, notice I've measured this out, but we're a little bit short. So let's see, 2, 4, 6. We're only going to add 7 holes here, but it's an easy way to do it, and we'll look at that. Good. Okay, so we've got 3 on either side. Now, again, let's keep ourselves from getting confused because we're in the groove of adding 9 holes. Now we've got to do 7. So let's just take this, put a little piece of tape over the last 2 holes. Now we're not going to get confused or make a mistake. Good, and we've got plenty of room. So down here, we're going to take our pattern because we've come in 1/2 of an inch. Let's mark there. Same on the other end. Good. All right, let's step back over to our main table, drop in a bevel and a groove. We're going to bevel and groove before we drop in our end punches, simply because it's very difficult to get a consistent groove line on a small round end punch. We're just going to run off the end. It's going to look great, very professional. But in all honesty, no groove line to me looks better than a bad groove line. All right, so we're going to drop in a groove. I typically use that on every edge, but right here, we're going to use an antique. So that antique is going to stick down in that groove line. It's going to look good. So with this, 1/8 of an inch, and we're going to do both sides of our strap. Now another point with this too, if you're trying to groove without a straight edge backing, what's going to happen is this can get squirrely and we're just going to run right off the edge. But if we butt that up against a straight edge, we've got no issues. So 5 to 6 ounce, let's go with our #1 Master Tools edger, and I'm going to do all 4 edges. Well, that looks good already coming together. Let's jump over to our punch table, drop in our holes and our end punches. I mentioned we're going to punch all of our holes. Well, actually, let's hold off. If we were going to die, that's no problem. Here's the issue. We're going to add an antique. Bring that brown down just a little bit. So what would happen is when we apply that antique, it's going to stick into every one of these holes. When we go to lace this, it's going to be an absolute mess. So for right now, let's just do our end round hole and our round end punch. So right here, 3/4 of an inch round end. Now if you've got a 1 inch, that'll work. Or if you don't have an end punch, you can simply clip the corners. It's going to look fine. But we've got the tool, let's use it. That looks good. Now for our hole punch, I'm going to go with either our largest or maybe the second down. 4mm, maybe 3/16 of an inch, because this is going to be a little bit larger piece of lace. There we go. Okay, let's jump over, add some dye, antique, and top coat. We're going to dip dye our hat band. Quick, easy, and the biggest point, this is going to be beautifully consistent. Now, the only reason I can go that route is we're going with a pro dye. It's the only dye I use. You'll see, it's going to be beautiful, but also great color, and I love the light brown, but we're going to bring that down just a little bit with some antique. Now, clean up, half a paper towel, and a cheap funnel, and we're there. So with this That's just inexpensive wire from any hardware store. We can make little hooks out of that. And we typically have a hole on most projects. So when we drag this through, let's go a little bit slowly. Make sure we get even dye all the way across. And there we go. Okay, I've got a rag over here just in case we have a little dye just sitting on the top. But notice that wicks in faster than I can actually get it back to the table. So let's give this about 2, maybe 3 hours on a standard day, and we'll come back, add some antique. We've given this ample time. Notice how consistent our dye color is, and how easy was that? The Pro Dye, you can't go wrong. And cleanup, just as easy. Okay, so we could absolutely knock in a leather balm on this. It would darken it a little bit, give it a nice gloss, be beautiful. Well, I want to go a little bit darker because my hat is a chocolate brown, so I don't want that much contrast between hat, band, and lace. So we're going to go with a medium brown antique. But first, let's do this. Let's add some painter's tape, or pretty much any kind of a tape, to the back. Because to me, there's nothing more unprofessional than big swatches of antique or dye. That just looks terrible. But this is going to look good. So let's tape the back of this and then trim the tape to the strap, or to the hat band. There we go. Okay, here's a simple trick. Now, we don't have to go this route. But notice too, my tape's a lot wider than my hat band. Well, we beveled our edges on this, so that's going to be rolled. Well, if we cut this straight, or if we go right to the edge, the tape's going to roll around half of that. Okay, so let's do this. Let's come in just inside of our edge on this side. Now, when I trim with my knife on this side, I'm going to lean my knife way out. So therefore, the tape isn't covering any portion of our rounded edge. Yeah, there we go. Now we can see the edge on both sides. That's going to look very consistent, very professional. Okay, let's reset here at our antique. We could always use a wool dauber to apply our antique, but I tend to like to go with a rag. I feel like I have a little more control. Well, if we put some on just a piece of scrap, it's a lot easier to get to. So let's take a rag and just daub this. And now let's just sparingly, let's just work our way down our strap. And notice too how it's starting to sink into our groove line. That's what we're looking for. And that's good. Get a little bit more in our groove lines. Already that looks good. Nice color. Now let's come back over our edges. And let's clean that off. Okay, that looks good thus far. Nice color. Let's give that about maybe half an hour. Let that antique dry. This just keeps looking better and better. Love this color. To me, that's very much a traditional leather color. So with our leather balm, this has got a little wax in it. It's going to give us a low gloss, but it's going to enrich in the dye color. Now, it will darken just a little bit, but let's apply with one rag. And we want to go very sparingly here. I don't want streaks and bubbles. That's the only thing we need to look out for. But it's relatively easy to apply. And we get that on. Okay, let's take a dry rag. Give that just a second or two to let that wax wick in. Now let's start to buff this. Okay, there we go. Love that gloss. Now let's add some to our edges. Good. Let's wipe that down just a little bit. And now let's take our burnisher or slicker. Love the nylon. This is a good tool. Let's go with the center groove. Now again, I'm going to slick. Pressure isn't the point. More heat and friction. Well, that looks good. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but it's now smooth, rounded, slicked. that looks good. So let's take our tape off. Good, that looks nice, nothing wrapping around on us. Very nice looking strap. Let's step over to our punch table, knock in our holes. We're going to punch a bunch of small holes in a small space on a small strap, but we're going to do our best to get these consistent. The big point here, if they're not perfectly consistent, we're never going to see that. I cannot imagine these holes were spot on accurate. Secondly, we're going to go with a very small tube because I want to see more lace, less hole. So on our revolving punch, on our weaver, we're going to go with a 2.5 millimeter. On our standard revolving punch, probably the smallest hole. If we want to go with a drive, about a 3/32. Now, the easiest way to explain this, because we'll never see this, and I'm going to struggle too, but what I'm doing here is I'm going to look left to right to try to hit my mark, but really I'm more looking at the distance between my groove line and my hole. So let's drop in one hole. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll work my way all the way down one side and back the other. I'm looking at the hole across to make sure I'm parallel. But again, right out here, let's see if we can get these consistent. Okay, there we go. Not bad, but not perfect. So what I'm going to do is flip this around. I'll work my way all the way down and back. Now, a good point here. As we move along, we start to get into a groove. So these are going to start to look relatively consistent. And one more. Okay. When we look at the hole, boy, that looks incredibly consistent, doesn't it? Well, actually, when we look a little closer, got squirrely on that hole. There's another one down in here. Right down here, I'm a little offset on the end. We will never see these. Secondly, if you can figure out a good use for these little things, you will be the hero of the leather craft world. All right, let's step over to our pattern table. We're going to talk about some lace options and then knock in our lace. Picking a dye color is tough, but now we're going to raise that difficulty level because these are such beautiful colors. So I did a headband just in black to see how this looks. Right there is the charcoal, and I think nickel, polished nickel, is going to look so good on that. Very clean look. On our gold, well, we've just got to add in some brass on that. Now with these, all I've done is taken some of our spots and I've just clipped off the tines so I can lay them on our design to see what it looks like. Very classic look there. Now on this, I'd love to go with the turquoise, but we're going to come back to that because right here I think our best look is our polished nickel. If I can pick them up. There we go. That looks good. It's not too much turquoise, but with our white, if we did drop in our turquoise rivets, that gives us a little color in there. That's a nice combination. And the red, always a good look. So there's so many ways we can go here. We're going to go with our chocolate brown, again to match the hat, but let's drop in an antique nickel spot, give it a very classic look. So I'm going to reset here. Let's drop in our lace. We're going to do a Spanish basket weave. It's one of my favorites because it looks good and it's easy to do. We've got a great video on this, but let's just do a crash course. So let's start right here. Permalock needle, best invention in leathercraft in a millennia, because all it is just a brass tube with a hole in it. That hole's threaded. So let's cut a taper on the end of our leather and let's just screw that on. This has a great bite to it. Crank down on that. There we go. Okay, so we're going to need 10 times our length for our basket weave. We'll come back around to that. But let's start right here. So I'm going to put a permalock on both ends of my lace, and let's draw that through. Now I want my top grain up always. There's an easy way to do this. So let's come through. Let's equalize out our lace. Good. Now starting up here, I'm going to take this piece. Now I'm going to run my fingers across that. This way, when I bring that finger up to the needle, I know that if I go through that hole, doesn't matter how squirrely this is, when I pull that through, top grain's going to be up. Because that's one of the biggest problems with lacing is untangling the lace. That really costs us a lot of time, okay? So I'm going to come out of this hole into my second hole opposite side. Let's flip this over, run our hands down our lace. Now I'm going to go right back to the first hole opposite side. So we're making basically half of an X there, okay? We're back where we started. Let's go across to the third hole opposite side. Okay, that's our pattern. So let's flip this over, back to the second hole opposite side, making half of our X, back to the front, and now to the fourth hole opposite side. And we're coming down to our end, making half an X on our back. Okay, let's go to our last hole, opposite side. Let's come back, second to the last, opposite. And then to our front, let's go through that last hole a second time. Okay, so there's half of our braid. So on this side, let's start right here. We're going to do exactly the same thing. So right here, this first piece of lace, let's go under that, over our second piece, and pull that through. Okay, let's go now to the second hole, opposite side. On our back, let's come back to our original hole, because now notice we're making our X. We're finishing out our X on the back. We'll see that pattern all the way down. That'll keep us from getting confused. So now, notice I went under this one. So now I've got to go over and under. So over the first, under the second. Good. Now to the third hole, opposite side. On our back, let's complete the second X. So second hole, opposite side. Back to the front. Again, we went under, so now we need to go over and under. And to the fourth hole, opposite side. And I'm going to finish this out. And now we're coming down to our end. So again, I went under, so let's go over and through our last hole. On our back, let's come back, make our last X. Good. And on our front. So again, we're going to go over, under, and through our last hole. Okay, well that looks good. Our Spanish basket weave, super easy to do, and that looks good. All right, so I'm going to reset. We've got 8 to do over here, but in all honesty, I don't think that's going to take but about 5 minutes each. And there's 10 times our length, so let's go ahead and cut a taper on that. Good. Now, on our Permalock needles, this is our medium. Perfect for our suede lace or latigo lace, the thicker laces. But when we jump down to our deer, or say our calf lace for edge lacing, we're going to jump down to the smallest of the Permalock. Nice point on this, it's flattened on the tip. That's really going to help us when we go to our basket weave. But also you'll notice this is on a spool. Okay, funny story. I've only got one. I'm not sure why. I should have two. So here's my best advice. When you order your Permalock needles, go ahead and get 3. We're going to lose one right off the bat. That'll leave us 2. But anyway, I didn't want to lose this right in the middle of a video when we're lacing. That would be bad. So okay, this is going to be a little harder to see than our sample. So let's just pick one. I'm going to lace this. Let's see how long it takes. and down to our last hole. Well, that looks pretty good. Now, one big point. I don't want to keep tugging on my needle. Once I can get this through the hole, then I want to grab the lace. Because we need some strength on this for this point, what I'm going to do is let's come up underneath 2 X's. There we go. And let's force that needle out. Now, the reason I say we need strength here is because I don't want the needle to come off of the lace up under there. We'll never get that. But let's draw that through. There we go. Going under 2 isn't bad. If we try to go under 3, then it gets a little tough. So let's pull that through. Good. Now on our knife, we rarely ever use this part of our blade. So let's lay that down, and I'm going to pull the lace across the braid, or across the blade. Very nice. That looks good. Now, of course, the benefit of having 2 needles. Let's jump back over here. Do the same thing on this side. And pull that. There we go. Quick. Yeah. When it gets stuck down in there, it's a headache. So again, let's trim that across the blade. Well, that looks pretty good. So now let's do 8 more of those. And our last one, well, that looks very good. Took a little bit of time, but so well worth it. This looks good. Okay, let's jump over to our punch table. Last 3 steps, and we are done with this beautiful hat band. Our braided areas have a little bit more body than the balance of the hat band. That's okay. This is going to soften out as we use it. But I would like to set our braid. Now we can always go with one of our rollers, and these are heavy. It's a good quality tool. But in this situation, I think I want to go with my tack hammer. I feel like I've got a little more force, but also a little more control. Now I'm not hammering this down hard, but what we're going to do is we're going to spread that lace out a little bit and set it. And back down the middle. Okay, well there we go. I know, and I'm notorious for picking the darkest possible colors for our project. But anyway, that looks good now. Very smooth, very flat. That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to do the balance to the rest of our braids. Very nice. Our braid is set. It looks good. Notice, we see no holes, only lace. But also, notice how consistent it looks. So, setting a spot. We've got this in most of our project videos. Easy to do. If we don't have any equipment at all, we can still set our spots. All we need is an art knife and a small pallet of cardboard, because we're going to push our knife through our leather, and we don't want to ding our blade. So right here, we're going to go with our antique nickel spots, 1/4 inch. I love that look. That's going to look good on here. So let's start right here. I'm going to do this left-handed so we can see what we're doing. But let's take a spot. I'm going to straddle my mark and press that spot into the leather. There we go. So now I can see where our tines are. So with our art knife, I'm basically just going to push this through. I don't want a lot of slit there. Again, I want more spot than slit. So let's do this. Let's run our art knife roughly. There we go. So we can see, if I can get that off, there we go, just a little bit on the back. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Now let's flip the knife. Notice our knife is angled. Let's flip our knife, come through from the other side. Nice. Now let's push our spot through. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Goes right through and it's flush. Now if it's not, what we can do is put this again on our little pallet, give that a tap. That'll force those tines down in. Now on our back, let's take our art knife. I'm going to bend these tines inward. Good. Last step. Now I'm going to tap on this. I don't want to hammer it hard enough to ding it, but let's hammer that. Good. There we are. I can barely feel those tines. They've actually sunk in on themselves. Okay, so let's do this for 6 more times. Well, I tell you what, I am loving that hat band. That looks good. Nice job. Okay, let's reset here. Put this on our hat. Now we can see where the manufacturer has tacked down the hat band. We can absolutely do that, and I just might. But here's the best point of this. I love a buckle set on a hat band. A buckle, a keeper, and a tip. Looks good. Well, the problem is, if our size holes are 1/4 of an inch apart, well, that can be too loose or too tight. We have nowhere else to go. When we lace this on, it's going to be a perfect fit. Now, as we wear the hat, we're going to have to fine tune this a little bit, but it's going to soften up and look good. So let's jump over here. We can go with just about any kind of a lace. I've cut this from our brown, our chocolate suede, and I've cut it about 3/16 of an inch, but just about any lace is going to work. So let's come through one side, the other. There we go. Let's see how our fit is. Let's make sure we get this centered. Good. Now let's crank down on that. Look at that. Almost a perfect fit. We've got about 3/8 of an inch in there. That's what we were hoping for. So now we can draw this down or we can let it out. And because it's laced, it's going to be a perfect fit. So let's do this. Square knot. I'm going to go right over left, circle around. And now let's crank down on that. Just a bit. Good and secure. That's what we need. Okay, left over right. And let's crank down on that. Good. We've got a good square knot there. Sturdy and solid. I don't think we're going to need to tack this down. And right there, we've got ample lace to hang off the back of our hat. Well, all told, that is a good looking hat band. Very happy with this. Let's get a better pic of our hat band. Love the dye color. Like the light brown, but it looks so good with the antique. The lace, the spots, absolutely beautiful. We've done a good job on this one, and we're going to get some compliments on that. But also, too, nice fit on our hat band. I cannot wait to wear this outside. I hope your hat band comes out just as beautiful. Good luck with your projects.